He was barefoot, the most powerful king in the ancient world, the man who had slain giants, united tribes, and built an empire from the dust of the Judean wilderness, was walking barefoot. His feet bled against the stones of the Kidron Valley. His head was covered in the dust of mourning. The servants who surrounded him were weeping. And behind him, the holy city of Jerusalem, the city he had bled to conquer, the city he had loved like a son, was now burning with the ambitions of the one who had stolen it from him, his own son. The year was somewhere around 977 BC, and the man weeping on the Mount of Olives, displaced, betrayed, hunted, was King David. But as the darkness swallowed him whole, something extraordinary happened. He began to write. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" What kind of man writes that in that moment? That is exactly what we are going to find out. To understand Psalm 27, you must first understand the man who wrote it. Because David was not simply a king, he was something far more complicated, far more broken, and far more human. He was born the youngest of 8 sons in Bethlehem, the forgotten child, the one too small to be considered when the prophet Samuel came calling for a future king. While his brothers stood tall before the prophet in armor and ambition, David was out in the fields, alone, watching sheep under a vast and indifferent sky. But that wilderness, that solitude, shaped him. Those years of silence between a boy and his God forged in David something no palace could manufacture, a soul that knew how to survive in the dark. He learned to fight lions with his bare hands. He learned the topography of the Judean desert, its caves, its dry riverbeds, its rocky outcroppings that could serve as both hiding places and lookout posts. He learned the ancient language of survival. And in those quiet hours beneath the stars, he learned to sing. The ancient Hebrew tradition tells us that David composed over 70 of the 150 psalms that now form the great hymn book of civilization. He was not merely a warrior king, he was a poet warrior, a man whose sword hand and his writing hand were equally calloused. He rose from shepherd to soldier, from soldier to hero. The day he walked into the valley of Elah, a boy carrying a sling and 5 smooth stones, and dropped the Philistine giant Goliath with a single blow, the trajectory of his entire nation changed. The crowds sang in the streets, "Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s." And that single couplet of celebration nearly cost him everything, because King Saul heard it too. From that moment, the jealousy of Saul became a consuming fire. The king who had once loved David like a son now saw him as a rival, a death sentence waiting to be carried out. He threw spears at David while he played the harp. He sent armies after him. He forced David out of the palace, out of his marriage, out of his friendships, and into the wilderness. For over a decade, David lived like a fugitive. He hid in caves. He slept on rock. He led a band of 400 men, desperate men, indebted men, the outcasts of Israelite society, through the badlands of Judah. He knew what it was to be hunted, to hear the sound of sandals scraping stone in the dark, and wonder, is this it? Is this the night I die? And through it all, he wrote. He wrote psalms in the caves of Adullam and Ein Gedi. He wrote prayers in the wilderness of Ziph. He poured out his terror and his trust into verses that crackled like fire in the night. And eventually, Saul died. David was anointed king over all Israel. He captured Jerusalem and made it the eternal capital of his people. He brought the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest that carried the very presence of God, into the city. He danced before it in the streets, barefoot and wild with joy. He had everything. And then, slowly, quietly, the second great betrayal of his life began to take shape, this time from within his own house. His name was Absalom, and he was, by all ancient accounts, one of the most beautiful men who ever lived. The book of 2 Samuel describes him this way: "In all Israel there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot there was no blemish in him. His hair alone was so legendary that when it was cut once a year, it weighed over 5 pounds. He was David's third son, and he was David's most dangerous enemy." The seeds of the rebellion were planted in blood and betrayal. Absalom's full sister, Tamar, beautiful, innocent, had been violated by their half-brother Amnon. David, paralyzed by his own guilt and political weakness, failed to act. So Absalom took justice into his own hands. He waited 2 years. Then, with cold precision, he had Amnon murdered during a sheep-shearing feast. He fled the kingdom. He lived in exile for 3 years, and when David finally allowed him to return, the reconciliation was bitter, incomplete, and poisoned with unspoken fury. Absalom used that fury well. For 4 years, 4 systematic, methodical years, Absalom positioned himself at the gate of Jerusalem. Every morning when the people came to bring their disputes before the king, Absalom was there before them. He was charming, he was brilliant, he kissed them on both cheeks, he listened when David would not. He whispered into every aggrieved heart across the nation, "If only I were made judge in this land, I would see that everyone got justice." The ancient text says something chilling. He stole the hearts of the men of Israel. This was not a military coup. This was a cultural seduction. Absalom didn't storm the palace. He walked into it through the hearts of the people. When the moment came, when his network of conspirators was woven across the entire land, Absalom moved to Hebron, the ancient city where David had been first crowned, and declared himself king. And the messenger came to David in Jerusalem. "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom." David survived Goliath. He survived Saul. He survived wars with the Philistines, the Ammonites, the Arameans. But this was different. This was a son. This was betrayal written in his own blood. This was the fruit of his own failures, his own sins, his own broken fatherhood, coming home to destroy him. David did not fight. He fled. The court records preserved in 2 Samuel chapter 15 describe the scene with a power that transcends 3,000 years of history. The king rose, and all his household went out on foot. His servants, his officials, his soldiers, the Cherethites and Pelethites, the 600 men of Gath who had followed him since his exile years, they all walked out the eastern gate of Jerusalem in silence.
They crossed the Kidron Valley, the dark ravine that separated the city from the wilderness, and they began to climb the Mount of Olives. And David went up weeping, his head covered, his feet bare. Every person around him wept, and the entire countryside wept too as the procession passed. Think about what this moment means. This is not a defeated general retreating from a foreign enemy. This is a father being driven from his own city by his own son. This is a king who has just watched 4 years of political betrayal culminate in the ultimate act of erasure. He has lost the throne. He has lost the city. He has lost the Ark of the Covenant, which is already being carried back into Jerusalem by the priests. He has lost the security of every institution he built. He is 50 years old. He is barefoot. He is weeping on a hillside. And in the middle of all of this, in the very marrow of this catastrophic grief, somewhere between the Kidron Valley and the wilderness of the Jordan River, one of the great poems of human history was being forged. Now open the scroll. Read it not as a religious artifact. Read it as a field dispatch written by a broken man in the dark for anyone who has ever been that broken. Verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? In ancient Hebrew culture, darkness was not merely the absence of sunlight. It was the metaphysical territory of enemies, ambush, and death. The Judean wilderness at night was terrifying. Ravines you could not see, soldiers who could follow you by starlight, serpents on the warm rocks. To say, "The Lord is my light," was to say, "I can see. Even in this darkness, I have not been blinded by my circumstances." And my salvation, the Hebrew word here is Yeshua. It means rescue, deliverance, the hand that pulls you from the abyss. David is not speaking philosophically. He is speaking with the urgency of a man who has just crossed a dark valley while his city burns behind him. And yet, remarkably, the tone is not desperation, it is defiance. Whom shall I fear? That question is not asked in ignorance. David knows exactly who is behind him. He knows the armies of his son are mobilizing. He knows Ahithophel, his own trusted counselor, the man whose advice was like the very word of God, has defected to Absalom. He knows the false witnesses are already circulating stories designed to destroy his legacy. He knows all of this, and he asks, "Of whom shall I be afraid?" Verses 2 through 3. When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, my enemies and foes, they stumbled and fell. Though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. The image of enemies who want to eat up his flesh was not metaphor to David. The ancient Semitic tradition used this phrase for the kind of total destruction reserved for conquered kings. Your name erased, your house demolished, your legacy consumed. Absalom had already prepared a tent on the rooftop of the palace where he would publicly shame David before all of Israel. The dehumanization had already begun. But David had fought too many battles not to know one thing. Enemies who came against him in the past stumbled and fell. He builds his courage not from arrogance, but from memory. He reviews the record of God's faithfulness the way a general reviews a battle map, and the evidence is overwhelming. In this I will be confident. Verse 4. One thing I have desired of the Lord, that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. Here is where the psalm becomes something transcendent. A king, a displaced, weeping, barefoot king who has just lost his throne to his own son, identifies one thing he wants. Not his throne back, not his enemies destroyed, not justice, not even vindication. The presence of God. The Hebrew word translated beauty here, noam, carries the sense of a deep restorative pleasantness. It was used to describe something so lovely it quiets the soul. David is saying, in the middle of war, in the middle of betrayal, in the middle of my worst hour, what I want most is to sit in the presence of God and simply behold how beautiful He is. This was not spiritual passivity. This was the most radical act of resistance possible. To declare in the face of total loss that the one thing that cannot be stripped from you is your access to the divine, that is the act of someone who has discovered where they truly live. David was physically unable to go to the tabernacle. The ark had been sent back to Jerusalem. He was in the wilderness. But the psalm tells us that worship is not a building, it is an orientation of the heart. Verses 5 through 6. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret place of his tabernacle he shall hide me. He shall set me high upon a rock. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me. The Hebrew word for pavilion here is sukkah, the same word used for a lion's hiding den. Scholars have noted that this may be a direct reference to the caves of the Judean desert, the limestone caverns of Ein Gedi and Adullam, where David had hidden from Saul years before. He is drawing on muscle memory. I have been in caves before, and I survived. He shall set me high upon a rock. In the geography of ancient Judea, the high ground was everything. It meant visibility, advantage, safety. God, in David's understanding, was not merely a spiritual comfort, he was a tactical position. He was the high place you climbed to when the valley was flooded with enemies. And then, my head shall be lifted up.
There is something almost physically powerful about this line. The image in 2 Samuel of David crossing the Kidron with his head bowed and covered, the posture of mourning, of shame, of defeat, is directly inverted here. My head shall be lifted up. Not yet, perhaps, but it will be. He is writing toward a future he cannot yet see. Verses 7 through 12. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me, and answer me. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. When my father and mother forsake me, then the Lord will take care of me. For false witnesses have risen up against me, and such as breathe out violence. The middle section of the psalm is raw. The confidence wavers. The prayer becomes urgent, pleading, almost frantic. Do not hide your face. Do not forsake me. False witnesses are rising up against me. Scholars have long debated who these false witnesses are. During Absalom's rebellion, a man named Shimei, a member of Saul's clan, ran along the hillside throwing stones at the weeping king and screaming curses. Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, had brought false reports to poison David's allies, and Ahithophel, his most trusted counselor, was now in enemy halls providing Absalom with tactical counsel designed to destroy David permanently. The false witnesses were real, the violence was real, the danger was real. And yet, in verse 10, David writes one of the most piercing lines in all of ancient literature. When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take care of me. David's parents were not with him on that hillside. They had long since passed from the world. But this was not a biographical reference. This was a theological statement about the nature of ultimate abandonment. David is asking himself the oldest question in the human experience. Is there anyone left who will not leave? And his answer, forged in 50 years of wilderness and war and worship, is this: even if the most fundamental human bonds are severed, there remains a love that does not abandon. Verses 13 through 14. I would have lost heart, unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord."
The psalm ends not with resolution, but with resolve. David did not write this with the benefit of knowing how the story ended. He did not yet know that Absalom's rebellion would collapse. He did not know that his son would ride his famous hair into a terebinth tree, that the very glory of his physical beauty would become his trap and be killed by David's general Joab. He did not know that he would return to Jerusalem, reclaim the throne, and die in old age surrounded by his people. He wrote this from inside the darkness. And from inside the darkness, he made a single declaration: "I believe I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." Not in some distant heaven, not in a theological abstraction, here, in this life, on this earth. And then, remarkably, he turns to address his readers. He steps outside the poem, and across 3,000 years, he speaks directly to you. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. The rebellion of Absalom lasted approximately 1 year. Hushai, David's loyal friend who had stayed in Jerusalem as a double agent, successfully neutralized Ahithophel's counsel and bought David precious time. The armies of Israel loyal to Absalom were eventually drawn into a battle in the forest of Ephraim. The terrain, ancient, thick, disorienting, swallowed Absalom's forces. The forest, the scriptures say, devoured more men that day than the sword. And Absalom himself, riding his mule under the thick canopy of trees, was caught by the neck in the low-hanging branches of a great terebinth tree. Suspended between earth and heaven, tangled in the very hair that was his symbol of magnificence, he was killed. When the messenger ran to David with the news of victory, the old king did not shout. He did not celebrate. He wept. "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son." This is the dimension of David that no simple mythology can contain. The man who wrote, "Whom shall I fear?" is the same man who wept for the son who tried to murder him. The warrior's psalm and the father's grief exist in the same chest. They always did. He returned to Jerusalem, he crossed the Jordan, he came back through the city gate. The people who had abandoned him now ran to meet him. He reclaimed the throne. But here is what the history does not fully capture. The journey through the wilderness was not a detour in David's story. It was the destination. It was in those 48 hours of flight across the Kidron Valley, up the Mount of Olives, through the dark desert. It was in those hours that the definitive David emerged. Not the king who conquered Jerusalem, not the warrior who killed Goliath, but the human being who looked into the abyss, who lost everything that the world uses to define a person's worth, and still said, "The Lord is my light." That David is the one that has lasted 3,000 years. Every year, for the 49 days between the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah and the concluding feast of Sukkot, Jewish communities around the world recite Psalm 27 twice daily. They have been doing this for centuries. The ancient rabbis understood something about this particular poem that modern scholarship has only slowly rediscovered. That this text was not written for the comfortable. It was written for the precise moment when everything that held you together has been taken away. The light of verse 1 corresponds in Jewish tradition to Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment, the day when the books are opened and each soul is examined. The salvation corresponds to Yom Kippur, the day of atonement, the day when the verdict is sealed.
and the dwelling in the house of the Lord corresponds to Sukkot, the festival of temporary shelters, when the Jewish people build fragile huts and sleep inside them to remember that their ancestors wandered the wilderness with no permanent home. Every autumn, millions of people deliberately make themselves liturgically homeless to remind themselves that the only permanent shelter is not made of stone. But the reach of Psalm 27 extends far beyond the Jewish calendar. This poem has been read in the trenches of the First World War by soldiers who would not survive the mourning. It was memorized by enslaved people in the American South who found in David's cry from the wilderness an echo of their own. It has been recited in hospital corridors by parents who did not know if their children would survive. It has been whispered in refugee camps, in prison cells, in the lonely rooms of people whose worlds had collapsed around them. Why? Because David did something that very few writers in any age or tradition have ever managed to do. He refused the temptation of either false comfort or honest despair. He did not write a motivational speech. He did not write a lament that ends in surrender. He wrote something that holds both the terror and the trust simultaneously, without resolving one into the other prematurely. He says, "I am afraid. My enemies are real. My losses are real. The false witnesses are real. And also, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." Both, at the same time. No apology for either. This is the architecture of the soul that has found something beneath the floor of its own existence, something that does not shift even when everything built on top of it collapses. Somewhere in the 6th century BC, a scribe sat in the ruins of Jerusalem, a city that had just been burned to the ground by the Babylonian Empire. David had been dead for 400 years by then. His dynasty had ended, his temple was ash, his city was rubble. And yet the scribe preserved these words, because in the darkness of exile, in the grief of total national loss, the songs of the shepherd king were still the truest thing anyone had ever said about what it meant to be human and still standing. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. That imperative, wait, has been misunderstood by every generation that has read it too quickly. The Hebrew word is kavah. It does not mean passive resignation. It means to braid together, like strands of rope are braided, to bind yourself to something stronger than your own fear, and to pull against it until you feel the tension of its strength. It is the language of a man who knows the rope will hold, because he has held on to it before, in caves, in wilderness, on a hillside, barefoot and weeping in the dark. David survived, not because he was fearless, but because his fear and his faith occupied the same chest, and his faith was, by the thinnest of margins, larger. 3,000 years have passed since that barefoot king crossed the Kidron Valley. Empires have risen and fallen, languages have been born and buried, the geography of power has been redrawn so many times the ancient maps are unrecognizable. And still, in the small hours of the night, when the person reading these words is facing their own version of Absalom's rebellion, their own version of the dark valley, their own version of enemies that breathe out violence and take what was theirs, still the words come. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Not an answer dressed up as a question, a declaration dressed up as a question. A man on a hillside in the dark with no shoes and a broken heart, deciding one more time to believe, and writing it down so you would know you could too.